All right, well, let's launch into this. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what inspired your novel?
Sure. And actually, talking about browsing in a bookstore is a perfect segue into talking about the book. It was when I was browsing in a bookstore way back in 2012 that I first had the first spark of inspiration that would become the premise for this novel. It wasn't a Bookworks. I'm sorry to say it wasn't Bookworks or any independent bookstore. I'm sorry to say it. It was a Borders, which shows you how long ago that it was because they're defunct now and they're gone and you're still here. So that's cool. Um, and so, yeah, well, first, I guess I'll just kind of do a snapshot of an overall picture of what this book is, what it's about, and everything. For anyone who doesn't already know, uh, hasn't heard, is for anyone who this is all new to. So Narcissus Nobody. I just love this cover. I'm going to keep showing it, holding it up because it's so great. It's a work of offbeat and quirky, character-driven literary fiction. I was very inspired early on by Dorothy Parker. At the time, before I even wrote a word, before I even had any concept of what this book was going to be about, I knew that I wanted to write something contemporary that would have a similar vibe to what I got out of her poems and short stories, which I was reading and rereading like crazy at the time. And I just love the way the way she gets at the heart of things people, a lot of us have maybe thought but not said out loud. And just a real raw honesty to the point of it being kind of somewhat, some might say, cynical and melancholy, but with just right, that just right dash of humor that makes it so delightful. I love when I'm reading or any kind of watching a TV show or a movie, anything that makes me kind of chuckle while getting a laugh and a lump in my throat, and that laugh cry beautiful blend is something I'm always trying to strive for. So the book focuses on one central character. Hope Townsend is her name. She is an eccentric loner. She likes animals more than people for the most part. She has several canine companions that make appearances throughout the book and are characters of their own. And she marches to the beat of her own very heavy, gloomy post-punk rock song. So Hope is different in that she doesn't subscribe to that normal life trajectory, what society expects people to want in life. And, that whole, like the game of life, those certain milestones, you go to school, you have a career, you meet your one person and settle down and have a family and all that. She's never really shows any interest in any of that. But what she does have going for her is she's very compassionate and she is very true to herself. She likes to live a life in accordance with her own values. And so this book is also about a self-help author named Brooks Nixon. Now, Brooks he achieved a lot of fame and fortune in the 1980s, writing these manuals for mostly aimed at desperate single women. And people probably know the type I'm talking about there, where he instructs women how to behave in order to attract a life partner. And people eat it up. They love it. He becomes a household name. But at some point, he becomes very disillusioned with this. He realizes he's preaching something he doesn't really believe in. So he switches and switches to a more of an anti-monogamy viewpoint, telling people that, you don't need to worry. Just love is a natural thing. It'll just happen. It's not something to strive for or to try and achieve, or it doesn't have to look a certain way. Just do what you want. It'll all work out and you'll be fine. And maybe you're better off alone. But he actually takes it a little farther than that. He actually takes it a little too far and starts actually advising people how to break up other marriages. So, as you can imagine, that doesn't go too well for him in his career. He's pretty much canceled at that point as far as the public is concerned. Um, so the book is this Brooks Nixon narrative happening in the background of Hope being the way she is and all of her life choices, which is, the road less traveled is less traveled for a reason in some ways. But it's the ways she responds to the things that are happening with Brooks that is what makes the book tick. So should I get to the first reading?
Yeah, sure. It sounds fascinating. I'm super intrigued by these characters. I hope that we are going to maybe hear from them. Are you going to read in one of their voices?
Yeah, so this first little section that I'm going to read takes place early on in the book. Hope is in her early 20s at this point. And this is her first real introduction to Brooks Nixon's writing. She happens to have this book by him, which she didn't even mean to acquire. She picked it up at a yard sale and she only got it. I think she didn't even pay for it. She just, the person having the yard sale was a compulsive hoarder and she felt sorry for him. So she took it off his hands. And now she's just reading it because she's bored at work. And her job is she works as a caregiver in a nursing home to this elderly woman named Mavis. She doesn't work for the nursing home. She's just there to kind of keep Mavis company. Mavis is very out of it. She has severe Alzheimer's disease, and Hope is just there to keep her company, take care of a few of her personal care needs, and a lot of the time, Mavis is sleeping, and Hope just has to entertain herself. So she has this Brooks Nixon book and thinks she might give it a read just for fun. And and at the beginning of this scene, she's listening to her Walkman, to a cassette of her favorite band, which is a band called Wasted Grave, which is a fictional rock band that also makes a lot of appearances throughout this whole novel. So it's nice that you'll be getting an introduction to them as well with this reading. So just a moment. Okay. Hope had listened to her favorite song umpteen million times, but it never lost its transcendental power over her. All sorts of mental clutter always vanished in those magical 3 seconds after she pressed play. The center of her chest levitated, whisked away by 1,000 distorted guitars into a swirling electronic landscape of sound. So glowing against the air, so splintering beneath the trees, I'm a stranger, dying, dreamlike, without care. It's just another pink. It's just another pink. It's just another pink. Honey, melt down. Judging from the picture on the cover, this book couldn't have been written past 1985. Mr. Nixon sported a green polo shirt, a pastel yellow sweater knotted over his shoulders, and the dubious tight curls of a likely perm, which, together with his crooked teeth and heavy arched eyebrows, created the overall impression of a man in a goofy disguise. Before she read a whole page, Hope could already sense the arresting rhythm of prose that made these books so popular. The author started by firing off a barrage of probing questions and then went in for the kill with his outrageous promise. Hard to believe anyone would fall for such blatant marketing hocus pocus. She plowed through the book's prologue hungrily, eager to scoff at its trite and patronizing presumptions. Are you tired of dead-end relationships? Do you seem to keep on dating the same immature men over and over? Do you long for a meaningful connection and fear you'll never find one? Do you secretly suspect that all men are pigs? If you answered yes to any of these questions, you are not alone. But I have good news for you. In buying this book, you have taken the first step toward finding the deep, lasting commitment you deserve. Congratulations. The foot of the bed jiggled a little as Mavis kicked at her covers and strained her ragged vocal cords. Delma, Delma's at her house, Miss Mavis. Do you need something? Toilet. Okay. Mavis had worn adult diapers for over a decade now, and these bathroom trips of hers usually fell into one of two categories: too late or false alarm. But she vehemently insisted on making the trips, despite what an arduous task it had become for all parties involved. Retaining this mundane habit of self care represented her final grasp at a long gone autonomy, one supposed. As the two of them lumbered and heaved their way into the handicap-equipped facility, Hope made herself a silent promise. If she ever reached this stage in life, there would be no more fighting. She would graciously lie back and let the robots do all the work. This time it was a false alarm. The trick about false alarms was not acknowledging their falseness. She sat on the edge of the tub for about 15 minutes, hummed a few old country songs, then wasted a wad of clean toilet paper and a flush before helping the old woman back to bed. Through my work as a relationship coach, I have heard countless stories from frustrated women like you over the years. I began to notice a common thread between these stories, and I set out to break the discouraging cycle of predictable patterns once and for all. Let me tell you, the response to my 3M system has been overwhelming. I receive hundreds of thank you letters a day from the women who've attended my seminars, and now this valuable information is available to you in convenient book form. With the help of my simple strategies and concrete tools, you too will soon learn to become the top priority in any man's life with very minimal effort. A labored sound emanated from Mavis's side of the room, followed by a long stream of whispered expletives. What's wrong, Mavis? What's wrong, Miss Mavis? Can't sleep? Oh, God damn it. Well, okay, I'll take that as a yes. How about I go get you some nice warm milk? Sound good? Hang tight. I'll be right back. As Hope swooshed by her, Mavis lifted a mangled finger and widened her eyes as though signaling a waitress. Hold that thought, love, Hope shot back before slipping out the door. She knew this was a ridiculous thing to say to a senile person, but she didn't want to risk having to endure another bathroom trip. Hope couldn't tell one worker from another in the clanging, steamy commotion of that huge kitchen, but they all clearly recognized her. Chaos parted like the Red Sea as 4 or 5 women of color in hairnets all scurried to get her whatever she needed with polite efficiency. The contrast between the drudgery of their undervalued positions and the cushiness of her own made her draw her shoulders in, seized by a sudden urge to shrink and disappear. After procuring the styrofoam cup of microwave milk, she revealed her ulterior motive to the women, bookending it with gratuitous apologies. Sorry, I hate to be a bother, but is there any way I could use the phone? I just need to make one quick call. Sorry. A very pregnant custodian led her to the noisy break room, a place far less relaxing than the one she would return to. The back of her neck became flush with every passing ring, and by the time Nathan's answering machine kicked on, a current of undefined resentment had reached her fingertips. What's up? This is Nate. Leave me a message. In the 6 months since they'd met, Hope had never once heard anyone refer to Nathan as Nate. His roommate didn't call him that. The skateboarding manager of the hotel where he worked as breakfast cook always clearly enunciated both syllables of his name. Perhaps certain privileged friends of his got to use the more familiar moniker. Hope wouldn't know. The only time she'd heard of him having any friends at all was when he needed an excuse to get out of one of their rendezvous. I gotta help a friend move, or validation for one of his implausible claims. My friend worked there. It's owned by neo-Nazis. Sometimes she wondered if they even existed at all, these chums of his. If they did exist, why couldn't she meet them? And if they didn't, why lie? In the end, it didn't matter. No matter which angle she considered it from, his outgoing message still annoyed the hell out of her. Yeah. Hi, Nate. It's Hope, Nate. I'm just calling to remind you about picking me up. And so I'm off at 6:30 and I'll be waiting in the circle to drive out front. Okay? I'll see you soon, I hope. All right, bye, Nate. Back in the room, Mavis greeted Hope with a distrustful glare that actually made her feel a tad guilty about the length of her absence, even though she knew Mavis couldn't care less. The look plainly didn't mean, what took you so long, but rather, who the fuck are you? Okay, Miss Mavis, I brought that warm milk you asked for. Now sit up and use your straw so it doesn't spill. This'll put you right to sleep in no time. You'll see. What the? Oh, Christ, son of a. There you go. That's good. One more swallow. Perfect. That should do the trick. Now, I'm going to turn out the light again, but I'm still right here if you need me, okay? Ah, bugger. Lordy, lordy, lordy. Good night, Mavis. It never ceases to amaze me how a woman so smart, disciplined, and calm when facing career challenges can still exhibit such poor judgment and lack of self-control when it comes to her romantic life. Shouldn't something as important as finding a partner for life merit the same razor-sharp focus and determination as plotting one's vocational path? The book reminded Hope of a favorite old story her grandfather used to tell. Once at the Iowa State Fair as a kid, Grandpa had seen a sign that said, "Learn to whittle, 5 cents to enter." He'd stood in line for 40 minutes, clutching a nickel begged from his mother, until finally a woman had ushered him into a tent with 4 or 5 other kids. There, a curtain had whooshed open on a scene that was, well, anticlimactic to say the least. A guy with a handlebar mustache was sitting there scraping away at a twig with heaps of shavings at his feet, repeating and repeating the same 8 words in a stone-faced monotone. Never cut toward yourself, always cut from yourself. True, Hope hadn't technically paid to learn Brooks's 3M system, but the feeling of being duped echoed her grandfather's story perfectly. She wished she could bring him back from the dead for a minute just to tell him about it. So I'm going to stop there for now. That little story anecdote at the end about the learning to whittle tent actually came from my own grandfather, and it's been kind of a joke in our family about, that when something is hyped up as being some kind of life-changing advice, and then it turns out to be something very sort of
Anticlimactic.
common sense. So yeah, anticlimactic and just kind of common sense. And also I wanted to add there that the Brooks Nixon book that she's reading is called Manage, Manipulate, and Maneuver: How to Get Your Non-Committal Man Hooked in 3 Easy Steps. And he also refers to it as his 3M system: manage, manipulate, and maneuver.
OMG. I love it. I can't even begin to tell you how many authors like this have actually approached us to do book events. There are so many books in this genre. It's perplexing and amazing. And I love that the title of his book has man in it 3 times in a row, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a great thing to pick up on. Yeah, that's beautiful.
Hilarious. I love it.
And yeah, so like actually I mentioned that the first spark of inspiration actually came from browsing in a bookstore. When I browse in a bookstore, I'm very eclectic. I like to wander around and look at all the sections. I look at the children's books, even though I don't have children. I look at the coffee table book, like just all of it. And I've always been fascinated with the various ways humans try to make sense of life. So self-help, the whole self-help industry, I love it, and I'm a big consumer of it. I just think it's great, and I think it's all valuable. Inspiration and help for getting through life can come from any source, and so this umbrella includes religion and pop spirituality, things like tarot cards, the Magic 8 Ball, any astrology, anything like that that people do. Throughout this book, I satirize a lot of these things, but I really think it's all great. It's just what I don't like is anyone saying this way is the right way to live or to make sense of your life, and all the other ways are wrong. So
Sure.
And I noticed on this one occasion when I was browsing at the Borders, I found myself in the books that were aimed specifically at single straight women. And I'm sure there's a lot of variation in this genre, and now things are probably different than they were in 2012. But it just struck me all of a sudden that there was this underlying theme, this message in all of them that was kind of the same, even if they had different titles. And it was this idea that uh, what everyone wants, what we all want, what we all deserve is to have some guy officially declare that he likes us better than all the other women. And this is the prize you earn by having good self-esteem. And so the trick is, you get your good self-esteem so good that you don't need external validation. And then you'll get a man who will adore you and take care of you because that's what you ultimately want. And I was standing there reading this, yeah, but if you really had good self-esteem, you wouldn't need that external validation. And I thought, wouldn't it be great to pick up a book that kind of said that kind of said, you know what, you're fine. You don't need any of this nonsense. Go home. You know, love is something that just happens. It'll come to you in some form. It may not look like what you're taught to think it's supposed to look like, but so I imagined the book that, or one of the books that Brooks Nixon writes later in my novel. And that was the first spark of inspiration. And I could see clearly. So fiction, when you write fiction, it always starts with a what if this happened? And a good idea, with a good what if, you can see a ton of possibility for fun things to explore.
I love it. I love the irony there. And I think that things haven't changed a whole lot in 9 years. I think those books are still out there.
Mhm.
And the idea sort of is, at least the way I look at it, is that you don't really have value, right, until you have that external
Mhm.
validation, or a man that
Mhm.
kind of comes along and rescues you from singleness.
Yes.
So I love how you're playing on that. It's just such a
I,
strong feminist theme.
like you're supposed to be you're supposed to, and a lot of times too they'll say fake it until you make it. Pretend you're totally independent so that you can get a guy to take care of you.
Right.
And yeah, so that is all very heavily satirized in the book, but I want to make it's important for me to say too that I'm not trying to say I'm above all that external validation stuff. I mean, obviously I wouldn't be sitting here all nervous about what these people watching think about me. I wouldn't have worked so hard to have my book published if I didn't care about, achieving things in life. It's we all have different degrees. And I also think it's important for me to get this off my chest too, that my job as an author is just to tell a story, to just create present this hypothetical situation and show how it plays out. And whatever conclusions people draw from it is totally it's totally a mixture of their experience that they bring to it. And it's totally their own. In other words, once my book gets out in the world, it belongs to the person who bought it. And the experience is going to be unique for each individual. It creates this alchemy of their own experience plus the book. And so I really want to say that any interpretation is totally valid. And I think it's possible that people might emerge from this, like might read the book and come to the conclusion that, I'll stay on the road more traveled. Thank you very much. I'll stick with my being married and retire, my 401k and all that, because that girl is a loser. And Hope does kind of seem like a loser. I mean, really, by all external measures, she doesn't go to college. She gets mixed. Her love life, particularly, seems very disastrous. I put her in these situations. I had her have kind of every type of love life disaster. But maybe in the end, when you look at it all and it all adds up to something that's not so terrible. Maybe that's just one thing I'm presenting for people to explore.
Excellent. Yeah, we'll let the reader make their own interpretations
Yeah.
then. Do you want to tell us a little bit about the title? I absolutely love the title. Did that come to you while you were writing? Was it something your editor helped you with? How did you arrive at that?
Okay, I came up with the title very early before I even read a word. I had this idea, and it, when I was imagining what it would be like if someone wrote a self-help book, and when they in which they say the main thing is be true to yourself, love yourself first. Like I said in the beginning, that if you really truly do love yourself first, you really don't need those external validations. And the character that in Greek mythology of Narcissus, we think of him as, everyone knows, like he was in love with himself. That's the idea of that character in that myth. And for some reason, that led to this awful character trait of narcissism being named after him. And I always thought myself that that was a bit unfair, because the guy, Narcissus, all these people are in love with him because he's so beautiful or whatever. And he's just like, yeah, whatever, get in line. I know I'm awesome. It's fine. He doesn't need them. He's immune to the external validation. Whereas a narcissist, I think, is someone who craves that external validation, and they need it in order to live. Everything they do is about earning that praise from other people. And so I thought that the person who I had this idea again before even is one of the initial sparks that started the whole thing, that the public, when this author started saying, love yourself and be true to yourself, and that's the most important thing, and that people would label him, that people gave him the nickname Narcissus Nixon. So that's what the title comes. The public in his later years give him the title Narcissus Nixon. That's really hard to say. And that was the original title of the novel, Narcissus Nixon. That was the title before I'd written a word. And actually, the character of Brooks was going to be the entire focal point of the novel. But once I got into it, I realized I needed to come at it from a viewpoint of someone a bit more like me. She's not me exactly, but she somewhat, so that I could write what I know and tell from more or less my viewpoint. Um, but the original title, so it was Three Rooms Press loved the book, and the first thing on our first conversation that Peter, the publisher, said to me was, "Well, we love the book, but this title, Narcissus Nixon." So the thing was, between 2012 and 2000, it was 2020 when Three Rooms Press picked it up. We had the word narcissist and narcissism came to be associated with a certain president that a lot of people find very yucky, and also the name Nixon is associated with another politician who is pretty corrupt and gross. So together, in the context of 2020, Narcissus Nixon sounded political, sounded like that's where your mind automatically went. And Peter came up with Narcissus Nobody, actually. In our first conversation, he was like, well, what if we just change the name? What if we just have it be Narcissus Newman or something like that? And I was like, sure, I don't care. I mean, at this point, I had been working on this dream of becoming a published author for almost like almost two decades, really a long time. And so at this point, I'm like, I don't care, call it whatever you want, really. But it was a little tricky well, it wasn't that tricky at all, actually, to make Narcissus Nobody. He later, in our first conversation, we tossed around some ideas. And then later he suggested, well, what about Narcissus Nobody? And I figured out a way, and it wasn't that hard, because I liked the sound of it too. I like just the sound of it without knowing what it's about. It has a nice ring to it. It's a little easier to say than Narcissus Nixon, but it's still hard. I still struggle every time. I'm like, yeah, my book is called Narcissus.
I love the title, and I
Yeah.
actually heard a lot of alliteration in that passage that you read. So I think it kind of fits nicely with your writing style. And it's just
Right.
kind of
Yeah.
an oxymoron in and of itself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you have
It's
another
true.
passage you'd like to read? We do have a few questions in the chat, so I want to be sure to leave time for those questions from the audience. But if there's something else
Yeah,
you'd like to read, we can do that now.
sure. Let's go for it. All right. So this one is later on in the book. And what it is a telephone conversation between Hope and her younger brother Asher, who is this lovable ex-con. And Asher is telling Hope all about a wedding he attended of one of their childhood friends, in which he was the best man. So this is Asher talking. I actually thought the idea was pretty cool at first. Jesse's woman riding in on this white horse with all this crazy harp music playing and shit. It was like all of a sudden everyone was on acid or something. But then they had a bunch of people get up and read poetry and stuff. After about 20 minutes or so, I was like, okay, guys, we get it. I hate it when they drag out the ceremony, Hope concurred, blowing steam from her teacup. And I hate it when people write their own vows too. It's like, come on. Nobody needs to hear you list the million varying ways you plan to be perfect doormats for the rest of your lives. Don't even get me started on the vows, Asher said. When the priest, or whoever she was, this old lady with long gray dreadlocks, said something about rings, I was like, finally. Oh, I should have mentioned, this is a kooky medieval themed wedding. Did I mention that? It's where everyone's in costume and stuff. I guess that was clear from the opening. So I was like, finally. And then she starts in with the, do you, Jesse, take blah, blah, blah. And they both said I do. So I'm like, oh, good, we're done. But then she turns to me like I'm supposed to say something. And I'm like, oh, shit, what's my line? She makes me repeat this whole spiel about how I'll keep Jesse on the straight and narrow. Oh, barf. Yeah. Then she made everyone else in the audience stand up and vow to support their union and shit. It was insane. Oh, God. Well, how was the reception? Did they feed you well, at least? A jumble of muffled voices started greeting each other in the background. Hope guessed someone in the Diaz family must have just walked in, and the rest of the harrowing wedding tale would have to wait for now. A few seconds of chaos passed before Asher returned, sounding stifled, and the background music abruptly ceased. Hope? Can I call you back in a bit? Sure. He called back minutes later from a noisy payphone and began to fill her in on the most pathetic damn reception in wedding history. So what kind of food did they serve? You wouldn't believe it. Chips and motherfucking salsa. That's all? Basically. No guacamole? There was one bowl of guacamole and one bowl of bean dip and a couple of plates of crackers and what else? Oh yeah, pickles. Lots and lots of pickles. Sounds kind of good, actually, Hope chuckled. What else did they do? What else? He said, pausing before startling her with a loud "oh" when he remembered the story's crowning touch. So you know that thing where everyone lines up and congratulates the couple? Well, I go up there and I'm shaking Jesse's hand and he's holding it longer than normal, which is kind of weird. Then his eyes get all serious and he goes, "Thank you for bearing witness." I was like, what the fuck happened to you, bro? You said that to him? Nah, I just thought it. But right when I was about to give up on Homer, he leans in my ear and he goes, "Dude, I have never needed a beer so bad in my entire life." So as soon as the line ended, we went back to the camper and got really shit-faced. Uh-oh. What did the bride think of that? She was not impressed. She's quite pissed at me right now, in fact. But I think it's more because me and Jesse decided we're going to start a band together. Sounds fun, Hope said, remembering how Jesse and Asher, who possessed not an ounce of musical background between them, used to constantly declare this same intention back in high school. What kind of a band? A punk band, Asher said, his sarcastic tone implying she should have known this. Cool. Do you have a name yet? She thought the name should have something to do with dinosaurs. Yeah. What is it? Ape shit. Ooh, nice. I like it.